I never imagined my 30th birthday would end with me standing outside my own home in the pouring Seattle rain, mascara running down my face as I stared at the locked door in disbelief. My husband Daniel's words still rang in my ears. "Until you agree to sign those papers, you're not welcome in this house." The worst part? Our neighbors were watching from their windows, witnessing my humiliation as I stood there in my drenched party dress, holding the remains of my birthday cake. But let me start from the beginning, because you need to understand how a seemingly perfect marriage crumbled in a single evening when I refused to give up everything I had worked for. The morning had started so differently. I woke up excited, preparing for what I thought would be a wonderful celebration. Our craftsman-style house in Kirkland overlooked Lake Washington, a dream home we'd purchased 3 years ago when Daniel got his promotion at the financial firm. I'd spent weeks planning this intimate gathering, just close friends and family, nothing too extravagant. The autumn weather had been surprisingly cooperative, with sunlight streaming through our bay windows as I arranged the appetizers and set up the decorations. My best friend Amy arrived early to help, bringing her signature Vietnamese spring rolls and a warm hug. "Rachel, this place looks amazing," she said, adjusting one of the copper balloons I'd artfully arranged. 30 is going to be your year. I can feel it. If only she knew how right she was, though not in the way either of us expected. Daniel had been acting strange all week, constantly on his phone and having hushed conversations with his mother, Patricia. I'd brushed it off as work stress. His role as a financial advisor often meant dealing with demanding clients. But now, looking back, I should have seen the signs. The way he'd been insisting I add his mother to our house deed, for tax purposes. How he'd been slowly moving our important documents to his office. The subtle comments about my graphic design career being just a hobby. The guests started arriving around 6 p.m., our home filled with the familiar faces of friends and colleagues, their gifts piling up on the designated table, their laughter mixing with the carefully curated playlist I'd spent hours perfecting. Patricia arrived fashionably late as usual, wearing an outfit that probably cost more than my monthly income. She air-kissed my cheeks, leaving behind the cloying scent of her designer perfume. "Darling," she drawled, her Seattle socialite accent in full force. "The house looks quaint, though I still think you should have let me hire my event planner." She peered around with the same expression she'd worn at our wedding, like someone who had just bitten into an underripe lemon. I forced a smile, years of practice making it almost believable. "Thanks for coming, Patricia. Daniel's in the kitchen if you're looking for him." She swept past me, her Louboutin heels clicking against our hardwood floors I had personally selected, and that she had criticized as too modern for the house's character. The evening progressed, and I found myself relaxing, despite Patricia's presence. My work friends complimented the appetizers. Amy kept my wine glass full, and Linda from next door brought her famous salted caramel brownies. Even Daniel seemed to be enjoying himself, though he kept checking his watch and exchanging glances with his mother. Then came time for the cake. I'd splurged on a gorgeous creation from our local bakery, 3 tiers of vanilla bean and raspberry, decorated with hand-painted watercolor flowers that matched our home's color scheme. As everyone gathered to sing happy birthday, I caught Daniel and Patricia having another one of their whispered conversations. Patricia nodded sharply, and Daniel's face set into a determined expression I'd never seen before. I had just blown out the candles when Daniel cleared his throat. "Before we cut the cake, there's something important we need to discuss." The room fell quiet, that uncomfortable silence that precedes life-changing moments. "Mom and I have been talking, and we've made some decisions about the house." My heart started racing as Patricia produced a thick manila envelope from her designer handbag. "Rachel, dear," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "we know you've been resistant to adding my name to the deed, but given Daniel's..." Recent promotion and the need to protect our family assets. We've had our lawyer draw up some new papers. I stood there, 30 unlit candles melting into my birthday cake, as Patricia explained how I needed to sign over my rights to our home. The home I had helped design. The home where I had built my graphic design business from scratch. The home that represented every dream Daniel and I had shared about our future together. It's just a formality, Daniel added, not meeting my eyes. Mom needs a secure investment for her retirement, and this way, everything stays in the family. In the family? I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. I am family. I'm your wife. Patricia's perfectly painted lips curved into a cold smile. Blood is thicker than water, dear. And let's be honest, your little design business hardly contributes to the mortgage. The room had grown painfully quiet. Our guests shifted uncomfortably, some staring at their shoes, others pretending to be fascinated by their wine glasses. Amy stepped forward, placing a protective hand on my arm, but I barely felt it. All I could focus on was the betrayal unfolding before me. I won't sign, I said, my voice growing stronger. This is our home, Daniel. We chose it together. We built a life here together. That's when Daniel's face changed, his familiar features hardening into something unrecognizable. If you won't sign, then you can't stay here tonight. Or any night. You can't be serious, I breathed. But he was already moving toward the door, keys in hand. Sign the papers, Rachel, he demanded, or get out. I looked around the room, at the faces of people who had come to celebrate my birthday, now, witnesses to my marriage's implosion. Some looked away in embarrassment, others in pity. Patricia stood smugly by the fireplace, manila envelope still in hand, while Amy's face showed a mixture of shock and fury. In that moment, something inside me snapped, not in defeat, but in defiance. I grabbed my purse and phone, holding my head high as I walked toward the door. Daniel's hand shot out, grasping my arm. The papers, Rachel. Sign them. I yanked my arm free. No. The door slammed behind me with such force that the wreath I'd hung for fall decorating crashed to the ground. I heard the decisive click of the lock, followed by Patricia's muffled voice. She'll come around, darling. They always do. Standing there in the growing darkness, the first drops of rain beginning to fall, I realized this wasn't just about a house. This was about power, control, and a marriage that had perhaps been built on illusions all along. My phone buzzed with messages from Amy, offering me a place to stay, but I couldn't move. Not yet. I watched through the windows as our guests began to leave, scurrying to their cars with awkward glances in my direction. Linda hesitated at her driveway, clearly torn between offering help and minding her own business. The rain intensified, soaking through my carefully chosen birthday outfit, but I barely noticed. My mind raced through the past 3 years. All the little comments, the subtle manipulations, the way Patricia had slowly inserted herself into every aspect of our lives. How had I not seen this coming? How had I missed the signs that my husband, the man I thought would always have my back, had been plotting with his mother to take everything from me? This isn't how my story ends, I thought. The rain mixing with my tears. This isn't how Rachel Wilson gives up everything she's worked for. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling slightly as I scrolled through my contacts. I stopped at David Cohen's number, the family lawyer who had helped my parents with their estate planning. It was time to fight back. As I walked toward my car, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in a window. Mascara streaked down my cheeks, my hair plastered to my face, my beautiful dress ruined by the rain. But my eyes were blazing with a determination I hadn't felt in years. This was supposed to be a milestone birthday, marking the beginning of my 30s. Standing there in the rain, locked out of my own home, I realized it would indeed mark a beginning, just not the one anyone had expected. If you want to know how I fought back and reclaim not just my home, but my life, make sure to hit subscribe and the notification bell. This is just the beginning of my story, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The rain had finally stopped as I sat in Amy's warm kitchen, wrapped in borrowed pajamas and clutching a mug of chamomile tea. My best friend's face was a mixture of concern and barely contained fury as she paced back and forth, her house slippers making soft shuffling sounds against the tile floor. "I can't believe Daniel would do this to you," she muttered, pausing to refill my mug. "And on your birthday of all days. All these years, I thought Patricia was just your typical overbearing mother-in-law, but this is calculated." I stared into my tea, watching the steam rise in delicate swirls. The shock was starting to wear off, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion and something else, a simmering anger I'd never felt before. "I should have seen it coming," I said quietly. "The way they've been whispering, how Daniel kept bringing up adding Patricia to the deed. I just never thought." Amy sat down across from me, her dark eyes intense. "Listen to me, Rachel. This isn't your fault."
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
"They planned this, probably for months. They waited until your birthday party to humiliate you publicly, to make you feel powerless." The sound of footsteps made us both look up. Mark, Amy's husband, appeared in the doorway holding their sleeping 3-year-old daughter. "Finally got Lucy down," he whispered. "Rachel, I made up the guest room for you, and I called my cousin at the Seattle PD. He said you should document everything that happened tonight while it's fresh in your mind." I nodded gratefully. Mark had always been the practical one, thinking 3 steps ahead while the rest of us were still processing. "Thanks, Mark. I don't know how long I'll need to stay." "As long as you need," Amy insisted, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "That's what family is for. Real family, not whatever twisted version Patricia thinks she's created." My phone buzzed again, the 15th text from Daniel in the past hour. I didn't need to read it to know what it said. They were all variations on the same theme. Come back, be reasonable, think about our future. Each message made me feel slightly nauseous. "You should try to get some sleep," Amy suggested gently. "Tomorrow we'll call David Cohen first thing. If anyone can help you fight this, it's him." But sleep proved elusive. In the quiet of Amy's guest room, memories of the evening played on repeat in my mind. The look of triumph on Patricia's face, the way Daniel refused to meet my eyes, the pitying glances from our guests. Every detail felt seared into my consciousness. I pulled out my laptop, the one thing I'd managed to grab besides my purse, and opened a blank document. Mark was right. I needed to record everything while it was fresh. As I typed, more pieces started falling into place. The way Patricia had slowly infiltrated every aspect of our lives. The subtle comments about my career, my choices, my worth. The gradual erosion of my confidence, so careful I hardly noticed it happening. Around 3 a.m, exhausted but unable to sleep, I found myself scrolling through photos on my phone. Daniel and me on our honeymoon in Maui. Moving day at the house, both of us covered in paint and laughing. Holiday dinners, weekend hikes, quiet moments at home. Had it all been a lie? Or had Patricia's influence poisoned something that was once real and true? A new text lit up my screen. This one from Patricia herself. "Dear, you're only making this harder than it needs to be. The papers will be waiting when you're ready to be sensible." I deleted the message without responding, but her words ignited something in me. Sensible. That's what they'd always expected me to be. Sensible Rachel, who would quietly accept whatever they decided for her. Well, they were about to learn just how unsensible I could be. The next morning, David Cohen's office was already busy when I arrived, despite the early hour. The lawyer's salt and pepper hair was slightly disheveled, his tie loosened, suggesting he'd been there even earlier. He listened intently as I recounted the previous night's events, his expression growing darker with each detail. "Let me see if I understand correctly," he said, leaning forward in his chair. "Your husband and mother-in-law attempted to coerce you into signing over your rights to your marital home during your birthday party, then locked you out when you refused?" I nodded, grateful for his calm, professional tone. It made the whole situation feel more manageable, less like my world was imploding. "And the house was purchased after your marriage? Both names are on the deed?" "Yes, we bought it 3 years ago. We used both our savings for the down payment, though Daniel's contribution was larger. Patricia keeps emphasizing that point." David's fingers drummed thoughtfully on his desk. "Mrs. Wilson, Rachel, what they've done is not just morally reprehensible, it's legally questionable. Attempting to force you to sign legal documents under duress, denying you access to your legal residence. We have grounds here." Hope flickered in my chest for the first time since the party. What should I do? "First, we file for an emergency court order to regain your access to the house. Then, we begin documenting everything. Emails, texts, witness statements from the party guests. We need to establish a pattern of behavior." As David outlined our strategy, my phone buzzed again. Daniel's face appeared on the screen, along with a new message. "Mom's lawyer says you're being unreasonable. Just come home and we can work this out." I showed the message to David, whose eyebrows rose slightly. "They're trying to isolate you, make you feel like you have no choice but to accept their terms. Classic manipulation tactic. But they've overplayed their hand. The more aggressive they get, the stronger our case becomes." We spent the next 2 hours preparing documents, my signature growing steadier with each page. As I described Patricia's escalating behavior over the years, David's assistant took detailed notes, occasionally asking for clarification on dates and specific incidents. "One more thing," David said as our meeting drew to a close. "I want you to start a detailed journal of everything that happens from now on. Every interaction, every message, every attempt at contact. Documentation is going to be crucial." I left his office feeling more centered than I had since the party. The numbness was wearing off, replaced by a growing sense of purpose. This wasn't just about keeping my home anymore. It was about standing up to years of manipulation and control. Amy was waiting outside in her car, ready to take me shopping for essentials since all my clothes were still locked in the house. "How did it go?" she asked as I buckled my seatbelt. "David thinks we have a strong case. He's filing for an emergency order today." I paused, watching Seattle's familiar streets slide past. "Amy, I think this has been coming for a long time. The house is just the final play in a game they've been running for years." Amy nodded, expertly navigating through traffic. "I've watched Patricia chip away at you since the wedding. The constant criticism, the backhanded compliments, the way she always made you feel like you weren't quite good enough for her precious son. And Daniel. He never once stood up for you." Her words hit home, unlocking memories I'd tried to suppress. The dinner parties where Patricia would subtly criticize my cooking. The family gatherings where she'd compare me unfavorably to Daniel's cousins' wives. The way Daniel would always say, "That's just how Mom is," as if her behavior was something I should accept. At the mall, as I picked out basic necessities, clothes, toiletries, a new phone charger, reality truly began to sink in. This was my life now. I was starting over at 30, rebuilding from scratch. My hand trembled slightly as I handed over my credit card to pay. I'd always maintained my own accounts, despite Patricia's hints that I should let Daniel handle all the finances. Thank God for small mercies. "Rachel?" Amy's voice was gentle. "Your phone's buzzing again." This time it was a group message from Patricia to several family members. Please help Rachel understand that she's tearing this family apart with her stubbornness. We only want what's best for everyone. I showed it to Amy, who made a disgusted sound. She's trying to turn the whole family against you, make you the villain in her story. Let her try, I said, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. I'm done playing by her rules. That evening, back in Amy's guest room, I started the journal David had recommended. As I wrote, patterns emerged that I'd been too close to see before. The way Patricia had orchestrated seemingly casual encounters with Daniel's ex-girlfriends. How she'd subtly undermined my graphic design business, steering potential clients away. The constant reminders that I came from a simpler background than the Carters. A knock at the door interrupted my writing. It was Mark, holding a steaming mug of coffee and a determined expression. "The security cameras," he said without preamble. "The ones you installed last year after that break-in scare. They're still running, right?" I sat up straighter, realization dawning. "Yes, they upload automatically to the cloud. I can access them remotely." Mark grinned. "So we have video evidence of them locking you out? Of the whole scene at the party?" I was already logging into the security system on my laptop. There it was, footage from multiple angles, including the moment Daniel locked the door, the guests' hasty departures, me standing in the rain. Everything. "Mark, you're a genius," I breathed, quickly sending the footage to David. "Not genius, just married to a true crime podcast addict," he chuckled, nodding toward the kitchen where Amy was undoubtedly listening to her latest episode. As if on cue, my phone lit up with a response from David. "This changes everything. Meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. I went to bed that night with a different kind of tension thrumming through me. Not the helpless anxiety of the previous night, but something more potent: determination. Patricia and Daniel had underestimated me, assumed I would crumble under pressure. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. In the darkness of Amy's guest room, I made myself a promise. I would not only fight for my home, but I would also reclaim every piece of myself that I'd let them diminish over the years. The timid, accommodating Rachel they thought they knew was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone ready to fight back. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more manipulation attempts, probably even more public humiliation. But for the first time since Daniel had locked that door, I felt ready. Let them try their worst. I was done being sensible. The morning sun filtered through Amy's kitchen window as I reviewed the security camera footage with David Cohen. Each frame told a story, not just of that night, but of a carefully orchestrated plan gone wrong. On screen, Patricia's face contorted with rage as she realized I wouldn't comply. Daniel's stance shifted from confident to aggressive as he moved to lock the door. "This is exactly what we needed," David said, pausing the footage. "Their actions show clear intent to intimidate and coerce. The timing of the whole thing, ambushing you at your own birthday party, demonstrates malice." I nodded, sipping the strong coffee Amy had prepared before leaving for work. My hands had finally stopped shaking, though my stomach still churned at the sight of Daniel's transformed face on screen. "What's our next move?" "The emergency court order should come through today. Once it does, you'll have legal right to access the house. But Rachel?" David hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Be prepared. They're likely to escalate when they realize their initial plan failed." He was right. Within hours of the court order being served, my phone exploded with messages. Daniel's tone had shifted from cajoling to threatening. "You're making a huge mistake," one text read. "Mom's lawyers will destroy you." Patricia launched her own offensive, calling every mutual friend and family member. Her version of events painted me as an ungrateful, unstable wife who had stormed out of my own birthday party after making unreasonable demands. Some believed her. Others, like Linda from next door, reached out privately to offer support and witness statements. Armed with the court order and a police escort, I returned to the house that afternoon. Daniel was at work, but Patricia had installed herself in our living room, surrounded by shopping bags from expensive boutiques. Her face registered shock when I walked in with 2 officers. "This is private property," she began, rising from my favorite armchair. "You can't just—" "Actually, I can," I interrupted, holding up the court order. "This is my legal residence, Patricia. You, on the other hand, have no right to be here." The officers politely but firmly escorted her out, her designer heels scraping against the hardwood floors as she protested. I watched from the doorway as she got into her Mercedes, her face promising retribution. Once she was gone, I walked through the house, cataloging changes. Shopping bags filled with Patricia's clothes occupied the guest room. Family photos had been rearranged, with pictures of Daniel and his mother taking prominent positions. Graphic design awards, usually displayed in the home office, had been boxed up and shoved into a closet. I was photographing everything when Daniel arrived home. He stopped short in the doorway, his work tie askew, eyes wild. "How dare you bring the police into this? How dare I?" My voice was steadier than I expected. "You locked me out of my own home, Daniel, on my birthday, after trying to force me to sign away my rights. What did you think would happen?" "Mom was right about you," he spat. "You never understood family loyalty." "Loyalty?" I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. "Is that what you call this? Conspiring with your mother to take everything? From your wife?" We stood in the entryway, the space between us charged with years of unspoken grievances. Daniel looked different somehow, or maybe I was finally seeing him clearly. A man so enmeshed with his mother's wishes that he'd lost sight of his own marriage. "The papers are still on the table," he said finally. "Sign them, and this all goes away." "No, Daniel, nothing goes away. You showed me exactly who you are that night. I'm just sorry it took me 3 years to see it." I spent the next few hours packing essentials, ignoring Daniel's presence as he followed me from room to room, alternating between angry demands and attempts at emotional manipulation. When my car was loaded, I turned to face him one last time. "I'll be back for the rest of my things with the movers. Don't try to stop me again." That night, lying in Amy's guest room, I felt strangely peaceful. The house I'd fought to return to no longer felt like home. It was just a space now, filled with memories of a marriage built on shifting sand. The next few days passed in a blur of legal meetings and logistics. David worked tirelessly, building our case with the security footage, witness statements, and documentation of Patricia's escalating behavior. My phone continued to buzz with messages from flying monkeys, Patricia's term for the family members, and friends she'd enlisted to pressure me. But for every person who bought Patricia's version of events, another reached out in support. Jessica from my office offered to connect me with clients who could testify about Patricia's interference with my business. Linda provided a detailed statement about the night of the party and Patricia's previous attempts to undermine my position in the neighborhood. The real breakthrough came unexpectedly. Mark, reviewing the security footage again, noticed something. In the background, Patricia, arriving hours before the party, letting herself in with a key I hadn't known existed. Further investigation revealed she'd been entering our home regularly while we were at work, slowly implementing her plan to take over. "This goes beyond just the house," David said when I showed him the footage. "This shows a pattern of invasion and premeditation. They've been planning this for months, maybe longer." Armed with this new evidence, we filed for an emergency hearing. The date was set for the following week, but Patricia had one more card to play. The morning before the hearing, I received an email from Daniel's firm's HR department. They were terminating my contract for their rebranding project, my biggest client, representing nearly half my annual income. "They're trying to force you into a corner," Amy said as I stared at the email. Make you financially dependent so you'll have to accept their terms. But Patricia had miscalculated. The email thread included previous conversations where she'd pressured the firm's partners to drop my contract, citing family politics. David's eyes lit up when he saw it. This is exactly what we needed, he said. Clear evidence of interference. With your business relationships, we can add this to the suit. The morning of the hearing dawned bright and clear. I dressed carefully in a charcoal gray suit, my mother's necklace at my throat. Amy squeezed my hand as we walked into the courthouse, past Patricia's cluster of supporters. Inside the courtroom, David presented our case methodically. The security footage played on screens, showing Patricia's unauthorized entries, the birthday party ambush, Daniel locking me out. Witness after witness testified about Patricia's pattern of interference and control. When Patricia took the stand, her carefully crafted image began to crack. Under David's questioning, she couldn't explain the key, the unauthorized entries, the email to Daniel's firm. Her responses grew increasingly hostile, her true nature emerging under pressure. Daniel, testifying last, looked lost. Gone was the confident financial advisor, replaced by someone who couldn't meet anyone's eyes. When asked about his role in the plan, he deflected, always returning to his mother's wishes. The judge's ruling was decisive. Not only would I retain my rights to the house, but Patricia was barred from entering the property. Daniel would need to buy out my share at market value if he wanted to keep it. Additionally, the judge referred Patricia's business interference to the State Bar Association for review. Standing on the courthouse steps afterward, I felt lighter than I had in years. Patricia swept past with her lawyers, her perfect mask, finally crumbling. Daniel lingered, looking like he wanted to speak, but Amy stepped between us, a protective barrier. "Let's go home," she said softly. "The real work starts now." She was right. Winning the case was just the beginning. I had a life to rebuild, a business to strengthen, and most importantly, a self to rediscover. The woman who had stood in the rain on her birthday, locked out and afraid, was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who understood that real family isn't about blood or legal documents. It's about respect, support, and unconditional love. That evening, as I sat with Amy and Mark on their patio, watching the sunset over Seattle's skyline, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: hope. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time since my birthday, I was excited to see where it would lead. My phone buzzed one last time, a text from Daniel. "I'm sorry, I should have chosen you." I deleted it without responding. Some choices, once made, can't be undone. Some betrayals run too deep for simple apologies. But as I watched Lucy chase fireflies in Amy's backyard, I realized something profound. Sometimes losing everything is just the universe's way of showing you what you really had all along. A home isn't just walls and a roof. It's the people who stand by you when those walls come crumbling down. It's the strength you find when you're forced to rebuild. And sometimes, it's the courage to walk away from a house filled with memories to create something new, something truly yours. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but I was ready. Ready to rebuild, ready to grow, ready to become the person I was always meant to be. Not Daniel's wife, not Patricia's victim, but simply, powerfully, myself. The autumn air grew crisper as I sat in Dr. Kate Sullivan's office, watching golden leaves dance past her window. 6 weeks had passed since the courthouse victory, but the real work was just beginning. The therapist's calm presence helped ground me as I unpacked years of subtle manipulation and control. "Tell me about the first time you noticed something was off with Patricia," Dr. Sullivan prompted, her notebook balanced on her knee. The late afternoon sunlight caught the silver in her hair, creating a gentle halo effect. I closed my eyes. memories flooding back. It was during wedding planning. I'd found this beautiful venue by the water, a restored boathouse with character and charm. But Patricia insisted we use the country club where she'd held every Carter family event. She said it was about tradition, but looking back, it was her first power play. And how did Daniel respond? He said what he always said, "Mom knows best." That became the theme of our marriage, though I didn't realize it at the time. Every decision, every choice had to pass through Patricia's filter of approval. Dr. Sullivan nodded thoughtfully. Often, controlling behaviors escalate so gradually that we don't notice until we're already entangled. It's like the metaphor of a frog in slowly heating water. The analogy struck home. Each small compromise, each time I'd backed down to keep the peace, had been another degree of heat. Until suddenly, on my birthday, the water had boiled over. Our therapy sessions became a lifeline as I navigated my new reality. The legal victory had given me financial security, but rebuilding my sense of self proved more challenging. Years of subtle gaslighting had left invisible scars that emerged in unexpected moments. I threw myself into reviving my graphic design business, determined to prove Patricia wrong about my professional capabilities. Word of what had happened at Daniel's firm spread through Seattle's tight-knit business community. Surprisingly, it worked in my favor. Several companies, impressed by my stand against corporate bullying, reached out with project offers. My home office in Amy's guest house, a converted garage they'd insisted I use instead of the spare room, slowly transformed into a creative sanctuary. The walls, once bare, now displayed my vision board, client mock-ups, inspiration pieces, and a single photo from my birthday party. Not of the disaster itself, but of the moment before. Me, smiling and unaware, surrounded by people I thought were family. "Keep it," Dr. Sullivan had advised when I'd mentioned feeling odd about displaying it. "Let it remind you of your strength, not your pain." The Seattle rain tapped against my office window as I worked late one evening, finalizing designs for a new tech startup. A notification popped up on my phone, an email from Daniel's sister Claire, who'd been overseas during the whole ordeal. "Finally heard the full story," she wrote. "Not Mom's version. I'm so sorry, Rachel. I should have seen it coming. Mom did similar things to my college boyfriends, anyone she saw as a threat to her control. I just never thought she'd go this far." The email continued, revealing patterns of manipulation I'd never known about. How Patricia had driven away Claire's first fiancé, convinced Daniel's brother to break up with his high school sweetheart, systematically isolated her children, until she was their only emotional constant. I sat back in my chair, processing this new information. Claire's words filled in missing pieces of a puzzle I'd been trying to solve. Patricia's behavior wasn't just about me, or the house, or even Daniel. It was about control, absolute and unquestionable. The next morning, I shared Claire's email with Dr. Sullivan. She listened intently, making occasional notes. "This kind of revelation often brings mixed feelings," she observed. "Understanding the pattern can be both validating and unsettling." "I keep thinking about Daniel," I admitted. "Not because I want him back, but because I'm starting to understand him differently. He never had a chance to develop his own identity separate from Patricia's wishes." "That's an incredibly empathetic perspective," Dr. Sullivan noted. "But remember, understanding doesn't obligate you to accept the behavior or maintain toxic relationships." Her words resonated as I drove home through Seattle's rush hour traffic. The city lights blurred in the rain, creating halos that reminded me of the tears I'd shed on my birthday. But these days, I cried less and laughed more. Amy's daughter Lucy had appointed herself my personal joy consultant, insisting on regular tea parties and dance breaks. My phone rang through the car's Bluetooth. Jessica from my old office. "Rachel, you're not going to believe this. Patricia just got removed from the board of the Children's Hospital Foundation. Apparently, someone leaked emails showing how she'd been manipulating donations and volunteer positions for years. I absorbed this news with surprising calmness. Patricia's carefully constructed social empire was crumbling, her true nature exposed to the community she'd tried so hard to control. I felt no satisfaction, only a quiet acknowledgement that truth has a way of surfacing. That evening, as I helped, Amy prepared dinner. She noticed my contemplative mood. "Penny for your thoughts?" "I was just thinking about patterns," I said, chopping vegetables with methodical precision. "How we sometimes need to step completely away from something to see it clearly. Like realizing your mother-in-law is actually Lady Macbeth in Chanel?" Amy quipped, making me laugh. "Something like that, but also realizing that I'm stronger than I knew. That losing everything I thought I wanted opened up space for what I actually need." Mark wandered into the kitchen, Lucy perched on his shoulders. "Speaking of space," he said, "Amy and I have been talking. The guest house is yours for as long as you want it, but we also found something you might be interested in." He pulled up a listing on his phone. A small craftsman house in a vibrant artistic neighborhood, walking distance from the lake. The exterior was painted a cheerful yellow, with a wraparound porch perfect for morning coffee or late-night contemplation. "It needs some work," Amy added quickly, "but the bones are good. And it's nowhere near any of the Carter family's usual haunts." I stared at the photos, something stirring in my chest. The house wasn't grand like the one I'd shared with Daniel. It didn't have lake views or imported fixtures, but it had character, potential, and most importantly, it could be completely mine. "Want to look at it this weekend?" Mark offered. No pressure, just exploration. That night, I sat on my small porch, listening to the wind in the trees. 6 weeks ago, I'd thought losing my house meant losing everything. Now I understood that a house was just a structure. Home was something you built inside yourself, brick by brick, choice by choice. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Signed. "The final divorce papers today. Mom's furious. I don't know what I am." I read the message twice before responding. "I hope you find out who you are without her defining it for you." Then I opened my laptop and started researching yellow craftsman houses, paint swatches, and restoration techniques. The future stretched out before me, undefined but full of possibility. For the first time since my birthday, I felt truly excited about what came next. Dr. Sullivan's words from our latest session echoed in my mind. Healing isn't about returning to who you were before the trauma. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be. As if on cue, Lucy's voice floated down from her bedroom window. "Auntie Rachel, come read me a story." I smiled, gathering my things to head inside. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to define myself on my own terms. But tonight, there was a story to read, a family dinner to enjoy, and a future to dream about. The moon rose over Seattle, casting silver light across the city. Somewhere across town, in a house that used to be mine, Patricia was probably plotting her next move. Daniel was likely sitting in his office, wondering where it all went wrong. But here, in this moment, I was exactly where I needed to be, building something new, something true, something entirely my own. The yellow craftsman house stood before me, morning sunlight warming its weathered paint. Seattle's autumn chill nipped at my fingers as I clutched the real estate agent's card, waiting for her to arrive. Amy had insisted on joining me for the viewing, but a last-minute emergency at her kindergarten class kept her away. Standing alone on the cracked sidewalk, I felt a strange mixture of anticipation and fear. Sarah Chen, the real estate agent, pulled up in her hybrid SUV right on time. Her bright smile and practical boots suggested someone more interested in finding good homes than making quick sales. "Rachel?" I've heard wonderful things about you from Amy. The front door creaked open, revealing hardwood floors buried under years of neglect. Dust motes danced in the sunbeams streaming through unwashed windows, but I barely noticed the grime. My designer's eye was already seeing past the surface, imagining possibilities. The previous owner was an artist, Sarah explained, leading me through the living room. She lived here for 40 years before passing away. Her children are motivated to sell, but they want someone who'll appreciate the home's character. Character was an understatement. Every room told a story. The kitchen, though outdated, featured handmade ceramic tiles with delicate flower patterns. The dining room's built-in cabinets housed small treasures, paintbrushes, dried flowers, forgotten sketches. "There's something else you should know," Sarah said, pausing at the foot of the stairs. The owner, Margaret Wells, was quite well known in Seattle's art community during the 70s. Some of her murals still exist around the city. My heart skipped. Margaret Wells? I'd studied her work in college, admired her commitment to making art accessible to everyone. Now I was standing in her home, touching walls she'd touched, seeing the space where she'd created. The upstairs studio stopped me in my tracks. 3 walls of windows filled the room with natural light. Faded paint splatters decorated the floor, like abstract constellations. An easel stood in one corner, as if waiting for its next canvas. "This feels right," I whispered, more to myself than Sarah. "I thought it might," she replied softly. "Sometimes houses choose their next owners." As we discussed paperwork and possibilities, my phone buzzed. A text from Claire, Daniel's sister. "Mom's telling everyone you're trying to buy her childhood home. Says you're doing it to spite her. What's going on?" Confusion must have shown on my face because Sarah paused her explanation of the inspection process. "Everything okay?" "My former mother-in-law is apparently claiming I'm trying to buy her childhood home," I explained. "But that's impossible. This house belonged to Margaret Wells." Sarah's expression shifted. "Actually, let me show you something." In the kitchen, she opened a drawer filled with old documents. Among them, a yellowed envelope contained photographs from the 1960s. A young girl stood on the porch, unmistakably Patricia, her future perfectionism already visible in her straight-backed pose. Margaret Wells bought the house from the Carter family in 1975, Sarah confirmed. According to the records, they needed to sell quickly due to financial troubles. It caused quite a scandal in certain social circles. Pieces clicked into place. Patricia's obsession with real estate, her determination to control properties, her constant talk of family legacy. It all stemmed from losing this house. Now, here I was, unknowingly about to purchase the source of her deepest wound. "I can't buy it," I said automatically. "She'll make it into another battle." "Can I offer a different perspective?" Sarah asked, carefully returning the photos to their drawer. "This house has been waiting for someone to love it again, someone who'll respect its history while creating something new. From what Amy's told me, that's you." Before I could respond, another text arrived, this time from Daniel. "Just heard about the house. Mom's hysterical. Says you're trying to erase her past." I stared at the message, feeling the familiar weight of Patricia's manipulation attempting to settle on my shoulders. Then I looked around the kitchen, at Margaret's handmade tiles and the warmth they'd brought to generations of family meals. "What's the next step?" I asked Sarah. Her smile returned. "We make an offer they can't refuse." The following weeks became a blur of inspections, paperwork, and preparations. I threw myself into researching the house's history, learning about Margaret Wells and her art. Each discovery felt like a gift, connecting me to a legacy of creativity and resilience. Patricia's reaction was swift and predictable. She launched a campaign of calls and emails to the listing agent, claiming emotional attachment and family rights. But Margaret's children stood firm. They wanted someone who would honor their mother's artistic legacy. "You're doing the right thing," Dr. Sullivan assured me during our session. "Choosing this house isn't about Patricia. It's about recognizing where you belong." The universe seemed to agree. My graphic design business was thriving, with new clients appreciating my fresh perspective. Lucy had already claimed the window, seat in the future library for her reading nook. Even Claire reached out with unexpected support. "Buy the house, Rachel," she wrote. "Mom needs to face her past instead of controlling everyone else's future." The day I signed the closing papers, Seattle's typical gray skies cleared. Margaret's children had left something for me. Their mother's journal, filled with sketches and thoughts about the house. One entry particularly stood out. "A house is not a prison of the past. It's a canvas for the future, waiting for each new owner to add their own colors to its story." Standing in what would become my studio, watching the setting sun paint the walls with golden light, I finally understood. Sometimes healing means claiming spaces others have tried to mark as their territory. Sometimes moving forward requires standing your ground. My phone buzzed with Patricia's latest attempt at control, but for the first time, her words held no power. This house had chosen me, just as I had chosen myself all those months ago on my birthday. The next chapter was mine to write. That evening, as Amy helped me plan the renovation, Lucy spun in circles on the paint-splattered floor. "The house is happy now," she declared with a child's certainty. "It was lonely before." Looking at my found family, Amy's patient strength, Mark's quiet support, Lucy's boundless joy, I knew the house wasn't the only one who had found where they belonged. Margaret's journal lay open on the windowsill, her words echoing through time. Art is not about perfection, it's about truth. And sometimes the most beautiful truths emerge from the places we're told we don't belong. Tomorrow would bring contractors and paint samples, decisions about fixtures and debates about wall colors. But tonight, in this space that had witnessed both Patricia's loss and Margaret's creation, I was exactly where I needed to be. The future stretched before me like a blank canvas, waiting for the first brave stroke of color. And for the first time since that rainy birthday night, I couldn't wait to begin painting. The renovation began as Seattle's winter rains drummed against Margaret's old windows. Each day brought new discoveries in the yellow craftsman house. Behind crumbling plaster, we found messages written by previous owners, dates, names, small sketches that told stories of lives lived within these walls. The contractor, Mike, had a knack for preserving these little treasures while modernizing the space. "Look at this," he called one morning, carefully removing a section of kitchen wallpaper. Hidden beneath were Margaret's pencil marks, measuring her children's heights through the years. Each line told a story: growth spurts, teenage years, final measurements before leaving home. I was photographing the marks when my phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. Patricia's new lawyer, calling to inform me that she intended to contest the house purchase based on emotional distress and historical family claim. The irony wasn't lost on me. David Cohen's response was immediate and firm. She has no legal standing. The house was sold legitimately in 1975. Her attempt to claim emotional attachment after 48 years won't hold up in court. But Patricia wasn't done. Anonymous notes began appearing in my mailbox, filled with stories about her childhood in the house. Each one read like a calculated attempt to make me feel guilty, to paint me as the villain in her narrative once again. I brought the notes to Dr. Sullivan during our next session. She studied them thoughtfully, her reading glasses perched on the edge of her nose. "Notice the pattern here," she said, spreading the notes across her desk. "Every story positions Patricia as powerless, the victim of circumstances beyond her control. Yet her actions consistently seek to control others." "I've saved every note," I admitted. "Not because they affect me, but because they feel important somehow, like pieces of a puzzle I'm still trying to solve. Mike's discovery in the attic provided another piece of that puzzle. Among the rafters, he found a small tin box containing letters between Margaret Wells and Patricia's mother, Eleanor Carter. The correspondence revealed a different version of the house's sale, not a financial scandal, but a choice Eleanor made to free herself from crushing social expectations. "My dearest Margaret," one letter read, "thank you for giving my daughter's childhood home the love and purpose I never could. Patricia will not understand. She sees only what was lost, not what was gained. But you've turned a prison of expectations into a sanctuary of creativity, and for that, I am forever grateful." The letters painted a picture of two women decades ahead of their time. Eleanor breaking free from societal constraints, Margaret creating spaces for artists who didn't fit the traditional mold. I spent evenings in Margaret's studio, now cleared of dust and debris, reading their words by lamplight. Claire visited unexpectedly one rainy afternoon, bringing old photo albums and a heavy conscience. "I found these in Mom's study," she explained, spreading black and white images across the newly refinished dining room table. She doesn't know I took them. The photos showed a different Patricia, a young girl with untamed hair and paint-stained fingers, creating art in the very rooms where I now stood. In one image, she sat at an easel, her face alight with creative joy. The final photo in the series showed her in a starched dress, hair severely styled, standing beside her father as Margaret's family moved in. "She never painted again after we left this house," Claire said softly. "Dad used to say she became a different person, as if she packed away her true self along with her art supplies." Understanding bloomed like the first spring flowers pushing through the soil in Margaret's old garden. Patricia's need for control, her obsession with appearances, her determination to shape her children's lives, all stemmed from the moment she'd been forced to abandon her authentic self. But understanding didn't mean accepting her behavior. That evening, as Amy helped me install shelves in the studio, I shared my revelation. "It's sad," Amy reflected, carefully leveling a bracket. "But it doesn't excuse what she did to you, or to Daniel, or to Claire." "No," I agreed. "But it helps me move forward without anger. She's still living in that moment of loss, but I don't have to stay trapped in the pain she caused me." The renovation continued, each choice a deliberate blend of honoring the past and creating something new. I kept Margaret's ceramic tiles, but updated the kitchen around them. The paint-splattered studio floor remained, sealed beneath layers of protective coating. Eleanor's letters found a home in a custom-built display case, sharing space with my growing collection of art books. Patricia's attempts at interference gradually shifted from legal threats to public performances of victimhood. She gave tearful interviews to mutual acquaintances, claiming I was erasing Carter family history. She posted old photos of the house on social media, accompanying them with revisionist tales of perfect family life. But her stories found less fertile ground than before. Those who knew the truth about my birthday, about her manipulation, about her own mother's choices, stood firmly by my side. Even Daniel, still struggling to define himself beyond his mother's influence, began to question the narratives he'd been fed. "I found my old sketchbooks," he texted one day. "From before Mom decided art wasn't practical enough for a Carter. Man. I keep thinking about all the choices that weren't really choices." I didn't respond, but I added an extra easel to the studio setup. Not for Daniel, that chapter was firmly closed, but for anyone who needed space to reclaim their creativity. As spring approached, Margaret's garden began to wake up. Bulbs she'd planted decades ago pushed through the soil, proving that some legacies endure beyond our conscious efforts to preserve them. I spent weekends clearing away weeds, discovering her thoughtful design beneath years of neglect. Linda from my old neighborhood visited, bringing cuttings from her garden and news from the life I'd left behind. Patricia's redecorating the whole house, she reported, trying to erase any trace of your time there. But you know what? The neighbors all miss your holiday parties, your genuine warmth. A house is just walls without the right spirit inside it. The day I hung my first artwork in the studio, a large abstract piece inspired by Eleanor's letters, Lucy declared it perfect. "The colors are dancing," she said, twirling in the afternoon light. "Like the house is happy again." Through the window, I could see the garden coming back to life, each bloom a testament to Margaret's vision. On my desk sat Eleanor's letters, their wisdom bridging generations. Above my computer hung the last photo taken at my birthday party, reminding me of the strength found in starting over. Patricia's latest note lay unopened in the recycling bin. Her power over my story had ended the moment I chose to write my own. In claiming this space, this history, this future, I'd found something she never could: the courage to break free from the prison of others' expectations. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new choices, new opportunities to blend the past with the present. But tonight, in this house that had sheltered so many stories of transformation, I was exactly where I belonged. Not as Patricia's replacement, not as Margaret's successor, but as myself, an artist of my own life's design. Spring gave way to summer in Seattle, bringing long golden evenings perfect for painting in Margaret's old studio. The renovation had transformed the space while preserving its soul. But my greatest work wasn't on canvas. It was the rebuilding of my own identity. One particularly warm evening, as I sorted through old boxes Amy had stored for me, I discovered my college art portfolio. Page after page of dreams I'd slowly compromised away during my marriage to Daniel. The young artist who created these pieces would never have accepted being locked out in the rain, never have allowed her voice to be silenced. A knock at the door interrupted my reflection. Sarah Chen, the real estate agent who'd helped me find the house, stood on the porch, holding a large manila envelope. "Margaret's children found more documents," she explained, stepping into the cool interior. "They thought you should have them." Inside the envelope, we discovered Margaret's personal letters to Eleanor Carter spanning decades. Their correspondence continued long after the house changed hands, revealing a friendship that defied social boundaries of their time. Eleanor's last letter, dated just before her death, contained a confession that made my hands tremble. "My dearest Margaret, as I face my final days, I must share the truth about the house. Patricia believes we were forced to sell, that her father's business troubles left us no choice. She doesn't know I chose to sell, to you specifically. After seeing your art exhibition, you represented everything I wished for my daughter: freedom, creativity, the courage to live authentically. I hoped that by letting go of the house, I would free Patricia from the rigid expectations that were already shaping her. Instead, she hardened herself against change, determined to control what she feared losing. Please forgive me for not telling her the truth. Perhaps someday, someone will help her understand that real strength lies in letting go." The letter slipped from my fingers, floating to the floor like autumn leaves. Sarah picked it up carefully, her expression thoughtful. "You know," she said, "sometimes the universe has a strange way of bringing things full circle." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a message from Claire. "Mom's in the hospital, collapsed at another charity event. She's asking for you." The drive to Northwest Hospital felt surreal. The summer evening light painted Seattle's buildings in shades of gold and rose, while my mind raced with possibilities. Why would Patricia ask for me after everything? I found her in a private room, looking smaller somehow without her designer armor. Claire sat beside her, holding her hand. When Patricia saw me, something flickered across her face. Recognition, perhaps, or regret. "You bought my house," she said, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. "I bought Margaret Wells's house," I corrected gently. "The one your mother Chose to sell. Her eyes widened slightly. What do you mean chose to sell? I placed Eleanor's letter on her bedside table. I think you need to read this. The room fell silent as Patricia read her mother's words. Tears, real ones, not the performative drops she'd mastered for social effect, slid down her cheeks. All these years, she whispered, I built everything around protecting what was mine, what I thought was taken from me. And in doing so, you almost destroyed your children's chances at happiness, Claire added softly, just like the rigid expectations Mom was trying to free you from. Patricia's hand trembled as she touched the letter. I used to paint, in that studio. I thought if I couldn't have that life, I could at least control the lives around me, make them perfect, structured, safe from loss. But loss is part of growth, I said, surprising myself with the lack of bitterness in my voice. Sometimes we have to lose what we thought we wanted to find what we actually need. The monitors beeped steadily as Patricia absorbed this truth. Finally, she looked at me with clear eyes. The house, she said. Are you painting there? Yes. And I've kept Margaret's tiles and the studio floor with its paint splatters. It's a place of creation again, not control. Something shifted in Patricia's expression, a softening, a surrender. Perhaps, when I'm better, you could show me? Claire gasped softly, but I understood. The house had come full circle, offering Patricia another chance to face her past, to find the self she'd locked away all those years ago. The studio has 2 easels, I said simply. That evening, driving home through Seattle's lingering twilight, I thought about cycles of healing. Patricia's journey was just beginning, while mine had led me back to myself. The yellow Craftsman house stood waiting, its windows glowing with welcome. Amy sat on the porch, wine glasses ready. How did it go? She asked as I sank into the adjacent chair. Life is strange, I replied, watching the stars emerge above the city lights. Sometimes the very thing we think broke us actually sets us free. Inside, Margaret's old wind chimes tinkled softly, stirred by the evening breeze. Their gentle music seemed to echo Eleanor's words about letting go, about finding strength in surrender. I thought about the young artist I'd been, the woman I'd become, and all the versions of myself I'd lost and found along the way. Tomorrow, I would paint again in the studio where Patricia had once discovered her own creativity. Perhaps someday she would too. But tonight, sitting on the porch of a house that had witnessed so many transformations, I finally understood. Our greatest masterpieces are not the art we create, but the lives we dare to reclaim. Lucy's voice drifted down from her favorite, reading nook. Auntie Rachel, will you tell me a story? I smiled, gathering myself to go inside. Every story needs both shadow and light, loss and discovery, endings and beginnings. Mine had led me here, to this house, this moment, this truth. And like Margaret and Eleanor before me, I had learned that sometimes the bravest act is simply opening the door to a new chapter. The first hints of autumn colored Margaret's garden as I prepared the studio for an unusual visitor. Patricia's. Recovery had been slow but steady, each day bringing her closer to confronting the truth she'd buried decades ago. Today would mark her first return to the house since she'd left it as a teenager. The morning light filtered through freshly washed windows, catching dust motes that danced above the paint-splattered floor. I'd set up 2 easels, each with a blank canvas, remembering the photographs of young Patricia at her own easel in this very room. Time seemed to fold in on itself, past and present merging in the quiet space. Claire arrived first, helping her mother navigate the porch steps. Patricia wore no designer labels today, just simple linen pants and a loose blouse. Her hands, usually adorned with statement rings, were bare. She paused at the threshold, touching the doorframe where Eleanor's height measurements for her still showed faintly in pencil. "It smells the same," she whispered, closing her eyes, "like turpentine and possibility." The tour was silent, heavy with unspoken memories. In the kitchen, Patricia traced Margaret's tiles with trembling fingers. The dining room's built-in, cabinets still held traces of her childhood. A forgotten marble, a dried flower pressed between cabinet doors. Each discovery seemed to crack her carefully constructed facade a little more. Then we reached the studio. Sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating the space where she'd once explored her creativity before trading it for control. Patricia's breath caught as she noticed the second easel. "I haven't touched a brush in 48 years, she said, her voice small. "The canvas doesn't know that," I replied, opening my supply cabinet. "It's just waiting for color." Claire settled into the window seat with a book, maintaining a supportive but unobtrusive presence as Patricia and I faced our blank canvases. The silence between us felt different now, not charged with tension, but with possibility. Hours passed as we painted, the only sounds being brush strokes and distant wind chimes. Patricia's initial hesitation gave way to absorbed focus. Her corporate perfectionism softened as colors flowed and blended, imperfectly beautiful. Amy arrived with lunch, bringing Lucy, who immediately gravitated to Patricia's canvas. "It looks like feelings," the child declared, studying the abstract. "Swirls of blue and gold." Patricia's carefully composed expression cracked. "That's exactly what my mother used to say about my paintings," she whispered, tears tracking down her cheeks. The afternoon light was fading when Daniel arrived unexpectedly. He stood in the doorway, staring at his mother, not the polished socialite who'd orchestrated his life, but an artist lost in creation. Something shifted in his expression as he watched her rinse her brushes with practiced care she hadn't forgotten. "Dad always said you stopped painting because it wasn't practical," he said quietly. Patricia's hands stilled in the water. "I stopped because I thought control was more important than creativity. I was wrong, Daniel. About so many things." The admission hung in the air between them, years of rigid expectations and enforced perfection beginning to crumble. Daniel moved closer, studying his mother's painting with new eyes. "I remember drawing with you when I was very young," he said, "before you decided it wasn't suitable for a Carter heir." Patricia's next words surprised us all. "Perhaps we could try again?" The studio fell silent, except for Lucy's happy humming as she arranged paintbrushes by color. The scene felt surreal. My former mother-in-law and ex-husband in Margaret's studio, surrounded by the legacy of artistic freedom Eleanor had tried to preserve. That evening, after they'd left, Amy helped me clean up while Mark entertained. Lucy downstairs. "Are you okay?" she asked, carefully storing unused paints. "Surprisingly, yes," I answered, realizing it was true. Watching Patricia reconnect with her younger self, seeing Daniel understand his mother differently, it feels like healing, but not just for them. For me too. The next morning, I found a package on my porch. Inside was a small, worn sketchbook, Patricia's childhood drawings, preserved by Eleanor. A note accompanied it. "You gave me back something I thought was lost forever. Perhaps this belongs in Margaret's house now, where creativity is still alive." As Seattle's autumn deepened, our Thursday painting sessions became a quiet ritual. Patricia's corporate armor slowly melted away, replaced by paint-stained smocks and messy hair. Daniel joined occasionally, tentatively exploring his own suppressed creativity. Claire came regularly, sometimes painting, sometimes just sitting, in companionable silence. The house seemed to embrace this healing, this return to its artistic roots. Margaret's studio once again buzzed with creative energy, while Eleanor's letters watched over us from their display case, reminding us that sometimes the greatest act of love is letting go of control. One rainy afternoon, as Patricia and I cleaned brushes side by side, she spoke softly. "I spent so many years trying to reclaim this house, to prove something about status and worth. But being here now, painting again, I finally understand what my mother was trying to give me. Freedom." I thought about my own journey, from that rainy birthday night to this moment of unexpected peace. "Sometimes," I replied, "we have to lose everything to find what we really need." Patricia nodded, understanding flowing between us like paint colors mixing on canvas. We weren't friends exactly, but we were something equally valuable, witnesses to each other's transformation. That evening, after everyone had gone, I sat in Margaret's garden watching the sunset paint the sky in shades we'd tried to capture all afternoon. Lucy's words from months ago echoed in my mind. "The house is happy. Now," she was right. The yellow craftsman house had come full circle, becoming once again what Eleanor and Margaret had envisioned. A space where rigid expectations yielded to creative freedom, where healing flowed like paint on canvas, where different generations could find their way back to authenticity. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new canvases, new opportunities for growth. But tonight, in this garden where Margaret once planted hope alongside her flowers, I understood that some endings are really beginnings in disguise, and sometimes the most beautiful art comes from embracing the imperfect, unplanned strokes that life adds to our canvas. Winter descended on Seattle with unusual ferocity, blanketing Margaret's garden in pristine white. The renovation had fortified the old house against the cold, but nothing could have prepared me for the storm that arrived in the form of an unmarked envelope on a Tuesday morning. Inside, I found photographs I'd never seen before, Patricia and Eleanor in the garden, both young and smiling, candid moments of a relationship I'd only known through letters. But beneath these innocent images lay something more unsettling. Documentation of property transfers, financial records, and a handwritten confession that would shake our tentative peace to its core. Eleanor Carter hadn't just chosen to sell the house to Margaret Wells. She'd orchestrated an elaborate plan to protect her daughter from an impending scandal, one that would have destroyed the Carter family's social standing. The letter, written on her deathbed, revealed a web of secrets that had shaped Patricia's life in ways none of us had imagined. I sat at Margaret's old desk, snow falling silently outside, weighing the burden of this knowledge. The Thursday painting sessions had become sacred space, a place where healing flowed as freely as watercolors. Would this truth help or harm? Dr. Sullivan listened intently during our emergency session that afternoon, her office warm against the winter chill. "Sometimes," she said carefully, "protecting people from truth does more damage than the truth itself. Look at how Eleanor's well-intentioned silence shaped Patricia's entire life." The decision was made for me when Patricia arrived early for our next painting session, carrying her own envelope. Inside were the same photographs, the same documents, but her hands trembled as she spread them across the paint-stained table. "Did you know?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I just found out," I replied honestly. "Someone sent them to me too." Patricia sank into Margaret's old chair, looking older than I'd ever seen her. "All these years, I thought we lost the house because of Father's bad investments. I built my entire life around never being vulnerable to loss again. But Mother, she was trying to save me from something else entirely." The truth emerged like layers of paint being stripped away. Patricia's father had been involved in something darker than bad business deals. Eleanor had discovered evidence of criminal activities that would have sent him to prison. Selling the house to Margaret, a trusted friend who could protect its secrets, was part of her plan to shield her daughter from the fallout. "She sacrificed everything to protect me," Patricia whispered, tears falling onto the old photographs. "And I spent decades punishing everyone around me for a loss that was actually salvation." Claire arrived to find us sitting in silence. The evidence of her family's hidden history spread between us like fallen leaves. Her strength, so like Eleanor's, helped steady her mother as we pieced together the full story. The scandal hadn't just threatened their social standing. Patricia's father had been using the house to hide documents that could have implicated dozens of Seattle's prominent families. Eleanor's choice to sell to Margaret had protected more than just her daughter. It had preserved an entire community's carefully constructed facade. But why tell us now? Claire wondered aloud, studying her grandmother's handwriting. Why did these arrive on the same day to both of you? The answer came in the form of an elderly man who appeared at my door that evening. Harold Matthews, Eleanor's former lawyer, had kept her secret for decades. Now, facing his own mortality, he'd chosen to release the truth. Eleanor made me promise to wait until the right moment, he explained, accepting a cup of tea with shaking hands. She said I'd know it when Patricia found her way back to her art, back to herself. The implications of this revelation rippled through our carefully constructed new normal. Daniel, when told, spent hours in the studio staring at his grandfather's photograph. The man he'd been raised to revere had nearly destroyed everything. The wealth and status Patricia had spent her life chasing had been built on quicksand. But something unexpected emerged from this upheaval. As winter's grip tightened on Seattle, the Yellow Craftsman House became more than just a studio. It transformed into a sanctuary for truth-telling. Patricia's paintings grew bolder, darker, full of emotions she'd suppressed for decades. Claire started writing a family history, determined to document both the shadows and the light. Even Daniel found his voice, creating stark charcoal drawings that expressed his struggle to reconcile the grandfather he'd idolized with the truth of his legacy. The art that emerged from this period was raw, honest, sometimes painful, but always authentic. Lucy, with a child's wisdom, watched us all grapple with these revelations. One snowy afternoon, as Patricia worked through her emotions on canvas, the little girl tugged at my sleeve. "The house remembers," she said solemnly. "That's why it wanted you to know." Her words echoed something Margaret had written in her journal. Houses hold memories in their walls, waiting for the right moment to share their wisdom. Our job is simply to listen. As winter deepened, Harold shared more of Eleanor's story through weekly visits. Each revelation helped Patricia understand her mother's choices, her sacrifice, her desperate attempt to give her daughter a chance at a different life. The Thursday painting sessions took on new meaning. No longer just about reclaiming creativity, they became a space for processing generational trauma through art. Patricia's work evolved from safe abstracts to powerful pieces that told her family's story in bold strokes and deep shadows. One particularly cold evening, as snow fell thick outside the studio windows, Patricia finally put into words what we'd all been feeling. "Mother tried to free me from a legacy of secrets, but I was too afraid of loss to embrace that freedom. Instead, I created my own prison of control and perfectionism. I almost trapped Daniel in the same cycle. The truth had cost us our comfortable illusions, but it had given us something more valuable: authenticity. The Yellow Craftsman House, which had protected these secrets for so long, now stood as a testament to the power of facing our histories honestly. Spring would come eventually, bringing new growth to Margaret's garden and new chapters to our story. But that winter of revelation changed us all in fundamental ways. We learned that sometimes the most damaging secrets are the ones we keep to protect others, and that true healing begins only when we dare to speak our truth. The house, as Lucy had said, remembered everything. And in remembering, it had helped us all find our way back to ourselves. The first cherry blossoms appeared in Margaret's garden as I prepared for an exhibition that would change everything. Seattle's art community had taken notice of our Thursday painting sessions. Intrigued by the story of 3 generations of women finding healing through creativity in a historic home, The curator of a small but respected gallery wanted to showcase our work. Patricia's raw emotions captured in bold strokes, Claire's delicate watercolors exploring family history, and my own pieces documenting the journey from loss to reclamation. The Yellow Craftsman house hummed with nervous energy as we prepared. Every surface in the studio held paintings being considered for display. Patricia, still adapting to being seen as an artist rather than a socialite, fretted over which pieces revealed too much. Claire meticulously cataloged each work, creating a narrative thread that would guide viewers through our collective transformation. Sarah Chen, who'd become more friend than realtor, helped arrange the paintings in the studio for a preliminary viewing. "These pieces tell such a powerful story," she mused, studying a particularly striking canvas where Patricia had painted the moment of leaving her childhood home. "It's about so much more than just art." Lucy darted between the paintings, offering commentary with uninhibited honesty. "This one feels like thunder," she declared, pointing to one of my darker pieces depicting the night I was locked out. "But that one," she said, indicating Patricia's latest work, "feels like morning." The exhibition opening loomed closer as spring fully awakened in Seattle. Margaret's garden burst into bloom, as if celebrating our emergence from the cocoon of winter's revelations. Harold Matthews continued his weekly visits, each story he shared adding depth to our understanding of Eleanor's choices and their rippling consequences through time. One quiet evening, as we finished hanging the final selection of paintings in the gallery, Patricia broke our contemplative silence. "Eleanor would be proud," she said softly, studying a wall where our three distinct styles merged to tell one unified story. Not just of the art, but of this honesty we've found. The gallery space transformed as installation continued. Patricia's early pieces, filled with controlled anger and precise pain, gave way to more experimental works that embraced imperfection. Claire's watercolors documented family photographs and letters, breathing new life into fading memories. My own art traced the path from that rainy birthday night to this unexpected moment of collective healing. Daniel visited the gallery the night before the opening, standing for a long time before a triptych Patricia had painted about his childhood. The pieces showed the same scene from three perspectives: his young self drawing freely, the moment. Patricia redirected him toward proper pursuits, and a current self reaching back toward that lost creativity. "I never understood before," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "how much she lost, how much that loss shaped all of us." The exhibition opening drew an unexpected crowd. Seattle's art scene mixed with curious locals and family friends, all drawn by the story that had spread through whispered conversations and shared memories. Harold Matthews arrived early, carrying a final gift, Eleanor's own sketchbook, filled with drawings she'd made secretly throughout her life. As visitors moved through the space, the impact of our collective truth-telling became clear. Women approached Patricia, sharing their own stories of lost dreams and reclaimed identities. Young artists thanked Claire for documenting the complexity of family legacy. Others stood silently before my pieces, recognizing their own moments of standing in the rain, facing choices between safety and authenticity. Lucy appointed herself unofficial tour guide, leading people through the exhibition with unfiltered enthusiasm. "This is where the healing started," she announced proudly, pointing to a painting of Margaret's studio. The house helped them remember who they were supposed to be. The Seattle Arts Magazine coverage focused on the unique collaboration between former mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. But the real story was deeper. It was about the way secrets shape families, how healing can span generations, and the power of creativity to rebuild what control destroys. Late that night, after the crowds had gone, Patricia, Claire, and I sat in the quiet gallery. The space felt different now that our private journey had been made public. Our paintings glowed softly in the dim lighting, each one a testament to the courage it takes to face buried truths. "I spent so many years trying to erase the artist I was," Patricia reflected, her voice gentle in the darkness. I thought being perfect was more important than being real. Eleanor knew better, but she carried her own burden of secrets. Claire squeezed her mother's hand. We carry their stories now, but we get to choose how to tell them. Looking at our work displayed together, I understood something profound about healing. It doesn't erase the past or undo the pain. It simply gives us new colors to paint with, new ways to understand our own story. The exhibition would run for 6 weeks, each painting a window into our journey of transformation. But the real masterpiece wasn't hanging on any wall. It lived in the yellow craftsman house, where every Thursday still found us at our easels, discovering new truths through the simple act of creating without fear. As spring deepened into summer, Margaret's garden flourished with the same wild beauty that now infused Patricia's paintings. Eleanor's legacy lived on not in carefully maintained appearances, but in the courage to let authenticity bloom despite the risk of judgment. The house stood witness to it all, its walls holding decades of stories, some finally told, others still waiting to emerge. Like any true work of art, our healing remained unfinished, each day adding new layers to the canvas of our shared experience. And somewhere, I like to think, Eleanor and Margaret were smiling, knowing their faith in the transformative power of creativity had finally borne fruit across generations. Summer in Seattle brought an unexpected invitation. The Seattle Art Museum's curator had visited our exhibition and wanted to feature our story in a larger showcase about family histories, artistic legacies, and transformation through creativity. The email arrived as I watered Margaret's flourishing garden, the morning sun casting long shadows across the flower beds. Amy found me still standing there, phone in hand, water running unnecessarily over already soaked petunias. "Earth to Rachel," she called, waving her coffee mug. "You look like you've seen a ghost." The museum's interest sparked something new in our Thursday painting sessions. Patricia approached her canvas with renewed purpose, working on a series that traced her journey from controlled socialite to rediscovered artist. Each piece grew bolder, more honest than the last. Claire started documenting everything, interviewing Harold Matthews about Eleanor's final years, recording Patricia's memories of the house, and collecting Margaret's children's stories about growing up in this space of creative freedom. Her research uncovered more layers to our intertwined histories. "Look at this," she said one afternoon, carefully unfolding a yellowed newspaper clipping. The article, dated 1975, announced Margaret Wells' first major exhibition. In the grainy photograph, a teenage Patricia stood before one of the paintings, her expression a complex mixture of longing and loss. Harold confirmed what we'd suspected. Margaret had invited Patricia to the opening, hoping to maintain a connection with the young girl who'd once painted so freely in the studio. Patricia had attended secretly, telling her father she was at a school event. It was the last time she'd allowed herself to be near art for decades. The museum curator, Dr. Emily Zhang, visited the house to discuss the upcoming exhibition. She moved through the spaces with quiet reverence, noting the layers of history visible in every room. In Margaret's studio, she paused before Patricia's latest work, a large canvas depicting Eleanor at her easel, painted from memory and old photographs. "This is more than just art," Dr. Zhang observed. "It's a conversation across generations, a reclamation of lost voices. We want to recreate this environment in the museum space, not just display the paintings, but tell the story of how this house facilitated healing." Lucy, who'd appointed herself Dr. Zhang's personal guide, nodded solemnly. "The house remembers everything," she declared, "even the sad parts that turned happy again." The project took on a life of its own. Dr. Zhang's team documented every detail of the house's transformation from Patricia's childhood home to Margaret's artistic haven to its current incarnation as a space of intergenerational healing. Photographers captured the paint-splattered studio floor, the ceramic tiles Patricia had helped her mother install, the garden where Eleanor had once planted hope alongside her roses. Daniel's involvement surprised everyone. He arrived one Sunday, with boxes of family photographs he'd rescued from Patricia's attic. Among them, we discovered Eleanor's secret art collection. Small works she'd purchased from local artists, hidden away from her husband's disapproving eye. She never stopped believing in the power of art, Harold explained, examining the collection. Even when she couldn't create openly, she found ways to support others who could. The museum exhibition would open in autumn, but summer belonged to the process of deeper understanding. Patricia spent hours in Margaret's garden, recreating it in a series of paintings that showed its evolution through seasons and generations. Claire wrote the stories that would accompany each piece, weaving together the threads of our shared history. My own work focused on the transformative moments, the rainy birthday that ended one life and began another, the first time Patricia picked up a brush again, the day we discovered Eleanor's letters. Each canvas captured not just the event, but the emotional landscape that surrounded it. Dr. Sullivan visited the studio during one of our painting sessions, observing the easy rhythm we'd developed. "This is what genuine healing looks like," she noted. Not the absence of pain, but its transformation into something meaningful. The yellow Craftsman house seemed to glow with renewed purpose as summer progressed. Margaret's children visited more frequently, bringing their own stories and artwork to add to the growing collection. The museum project had sparked a larger conversation about family legacies, artistic freedom, and the courage to reclaim lost parts of oneself. One particularly warm evening, as golden light filled the studio, Patricia set down her brush and turned to me. "I spent so long trying to control the narrative," she said softly, "making sure everyone saw only what I wanted them to see. Now we're deliberately showing the messy parts, the painful parts, the real parts. And somehow, that feels more powerful than perfection ever did." Claire, working nearby on a detailed family timeline, looked up. "That's what grandmother tried to give you when she sold the house. The freedom to be imperfect, to create without judgment." The museum exhibition would tell this story to a wider audience, but the real transformation had already occurred within these walls. Every brushstroke, every uncovered memory, every honest conversation had brought us closer to understanding not just our own stories, but the larger narrative of how families heal across generations. Lucy, painting alongside us with determined concentration, captured it perfectly in her child's wisdom. Everyone's painting got prettier when they stopped being scared of the colors. As summer waned and Seattle's skies hinted at autumn's approach, we prepared for the next phase of our journey. The museum exhibition would open doors we hadn't imagined, but the yellow Craftsman house remained our anchor. A space where truth could be spoken, pain could be transformed, and creativity could flow freely across generations. Harold's weekly visits continued, each story adding depth to our understanding. But more importantly, each Thursday still found us at our easels, discovering new ways to tell old stories, finding beauty in the intersection of loss and recovery, painting our way toward whatever came next. The house stood steady through it all, its walls holding our transforming stories just as they had held Eleanor's secrets and Margaret's dreams. In the garden, new flowers bloomed alongside established plants, a living metaphor for the way healing works, not erasing the past, but adding new growth to old roots. And somewhere in the gentle evening light, in the quiet moments between brush strokes, we could feel the presence of those who had come before. Eleanor with her hidden art, Margaret with her bold vision, all the women who had found their voice within these walls. Their legacy lived on not in perfect facades or controlled narratives, but in the courage to create freely, to love authentically, to heal openly. The museum exhibition would tell our story, but the real masterpiece was the ongoing work of transformation, itself, messy, beautiful, and entirely our own. Autumn painted Seattle in shades of amber and gold as the museum exhibition opened. The Seattle Art Museum's Grand Hall transformed into a journey through 3 generations of artistic awakening. Photographs of the Yellow Craftsman House lined the entrance, showing its evolution from Patricia's childhood home to its current incarnation as a sanctuary for healing. The opening night crowd moved silently through the space, absorbing the story told through our collected works. Patricia's paintings traced her journey from controlled perfectionism to raw authenticity. Early pieces, tight and restrained, gave way to explosions of color and emotion. Her latest series, Eleanor's Legacy, dominated the central wall, each canvas exploring a different aspect of her mother's secret resistance against conformity. Dr. Zhang had recreated a corner of Margaret's studio, complete with the paint-splattered floor and north-facing windows. Time-lapse videos showed our Thursday painting sessions, the easy rhythm we'd developed as we worked side by side. The installation captured not just the physical space, but the spirit of creativity that had flourished there across decades. Claire's contribution wove everything together through carefully curated photographs, letters, and historical documents. She'd created a multimedia timeline that traced the house's story from Eleanor's difficult decision to sell through Margaret's years of artistic mentorship to our current chapter of healing and rediscovery. Lucy wandered the exhibition in a special dress she'd painted herself, offering impromptu tours to anyone who would listen. "This is where the magic happens," she explained, pointing to the studio recreation. "The house helps people remember who they really are." Harold Matthews arrived early, leaning heavily on his cane as he examined Eleanor's sketchbook, now displayed in a glass case. His eyes misted as he read the curator's note explaining Eleanor's secret support of local artists and her efforts to protect creative spaces in the community. The revelation of Eleanor's hidden art patronage had sparked interest beyond Seattle's art world. Journalists and historians began exploring similar stories of women who had secretly supported the arts during times when such interests were deemed inappropriate for their social class. Our exhibition became part of a larger conversation about legacy, resistance, and the power of creativity to transcend social constraints. Daniel attended the opening with his new therapist, spending long moments before each piece. The man who had once locked me out in the rain now stood surrounded by evidence of transformation: his mother's artistic rebirth, his grandmother's secret strength, his own tentative steps toward authentic expression. "I never understood the cost of conformity," he said quietly, studying a painting that showed Patricia destroying her early artwork. "How much we all lost trying to maintain the perfect image." The Seattle arts community embraced our story with unexpected enthusiasm. Critics praised the exhibition's honest exploration of family dynamics, generational trauma, and the healing power of creative expression. But more importantly, visitors began sharing their own stories of lost dreams and reclaimed identities. A book of blank pages near the exit quickly filled with messages from people touched by the exhibition. "My mother gave up dancing to be a proper wife," one visitor wrote. "Today, I enrolled in dance classes in her honor." Another shared, "I've kept my poetry hidden for 30 years. Tomorrow, I'm buying a new notebook." Patricia, who had once wielded social status like armor, found herself connecting with people on a deeper level. Women approached her throughout the evening, sharing whispered confessions of their own buried creativity. Each conversation seemed to soften her further, replacing her practiced society smile with genuine warmth. Claire documented everything, understanding that this night was itself part of the ongoing story. Her camera captured small moments of revelation: a teenage girl showing her grandmother a secret sketchbook, an elderly woman crying before Eleanor's letters, a young mother signing up for art classes while her daughter watched with pride. As the evening progressed, Dr. Zhang gathered us near the studio installation. "This exhibition is already having an impact beyond what we imagined," she said. "We'd like to develop educational programs around your story, working with schools, and community centers to explore how creativity can heal family trauma. The proposal sparked something new in Patricia. The woman who had once used her influence to control and constrain now saw an opportunity to facilitate freedom for others. By midnight, she and Dr. Zhang had outlined a series of workshops that would bring our experience to a wider audience. After the crowds departed, our small group lingered in the quiet gallery. Lucy had fallen asleep on a bench, her paint-decorated dress testament to her own artistic journey. Harold sat nearby, Eleanor's sketchbook open on his lap, sharing stories we hadn't heard before. Eleanor would be proud, he said, looking around at the collected evidence of her legacy. Not just of the art, but of the truth-telling. She carried such guilt about hiding her support for artists, about not standing up to her husband more openly. But look what grew from those secret seeds she planted. The yellow Craftsman house waited patiently across town, its windows glowing with welcome in the autumn night. Tomorrow would bring new visitors inspired by the exhibition, new stories to add to its collection, new opportunities for healing through creativity. Patricia touched my arm gently as we prepared to leave. "Thank you," she said simply, "for showing me that sometimes losing everything is the path to finding yourself." The exhibition would run for 3 months, but its impact had already rippled beyond the museum walls. In sharing our story of artistic reclamation and intergenerational healing, we had created space for others to examine their own hidden truths. Lucy stirred as Mark lifted her from the bench. "Did we help people remember?" she asked sleepily. "Yes, sweetheart," Claire answered, smoothing her daughter's paint-smudged dress. "We helped them remember who they were meant to be." Outside, Seattle's autumn rain fell softly, washing the streets in reflections of streetlights and stars. The yellow Craftsman house stood ready to continue its work of transformation, its doors open to all who sought to reclaim their creative truth. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new stories, new opportunities for healing. But tonight, surrounded by evidence of how far we'd come, we understood that the real exhibition wasn't on the museum walls. It was in the ongoing work of transformation, in the courage to create freely, in the choice to paint our lives in authentic colors rather than safe shades of conformity. Winter descended as the museum exhibition's success brought unexpected opportunities. A major publishing house approached us about turning our story into a book, focusing on art therapy and intergenerational healing. The advance copy of the Yellow House, 3 Generations of Artistic Liberation, sat on Margaret's old desk, its cover featuring a watercolor of the house Claire had painted. The yellow Craftsman house had evolved yet again, becoming a sanctuary for others seeking their creative truth. Dr. Zhang's educational program brought small groups of women twice weekly, each carrying their own stories of buried dreams and silenced creativity. Patricia, transformed by her own journey, led these sessions with a gentleness that would have been unimaginable a year ago. One snowy morning, as I prepared the studio for the day's workshop, an elderly woman arrived early. She stood in the doorway, clutching a worn leather portfolio. "I knew Eleanor," she said softly. "We took art classes together before she married. I've kept her drawings all these years." Martha Reynolds had been Eleanor's closest friend during their college years. The portfolio contained not just Eleanor's early artwork, but letters that revealed a deeper dimension to our family story. Eleanor had planned to attend art school in Paris, her talent earning her a prestigious scholarship. Instead, she'd married into the Carter family, surrendering her artistic dreams to social expectations. Patricia sat with Martha for hours, poring over her mother's youthful drawings. The distinctive style that had emerged in Eleanor's secret sketchbooks was even more evident in these early works. Bold lines and dynamic compositions that suggested a confident artist in the making. She never stopped creating, Martha revealed, sharing photographs of their secret painting sessions in her basement studio. Even after marriage, she'd visit once a month, always telling her husband she was attending charity committees. We'd paint until sunset, Then she'd go home to her proper life. This revelation added new layers to Eleanor's decision to sell the house to Margaret. She hadn't just been protecting Patricia from scandal, she'd been trying to preserve a space where artistic freedom could flourish, even if she couldn't claim it for herself. The book project gained depth with each new discovery. Claire interviewed Martha extensively, weaving Eleanor's hidden artistic life into our family narrative. Patricia created a new series of paintings inspired by her mother's early works, each piece a dialogue between their distinct styles. Lucy, now a regular presence at the workshops, developed her own project. She collected stories from participants, illustrating them in her childlike but poignant style. "Everyone has colors inside," she explained, working on a particularly vivid piece. "Sometimes they just need help remembering how to use them." Daniel's involvement evolved in unexpected ways. The corporate lawyer who had once prioritized image over authenticity now spent weekends in the studio, slowly developing his own artistic voice. His work, geometric and precise, reflected both his structured nature and his growing ability to embrace imperfection. Harold Matthews, growing frailer but still sharp-minded, continued sharing pieces of Eleanor's story. "She believed creativity was a form of resistance," he explained one afternoon. "Every secret painting, every artist she supported was an act of defiance against the constraints of her world." The Yellow Craftsman house absorbed these new stories, its walls seeming to expand with each shared truth. Margaret's children visited regularly, bringing their own children to experience the space where creative freedom had always been celebrated. Christmas approached, bringing with it an unexpected gift. A former housekeeper of the Carter family contacted us after seeing the museum exhibition. In her attic, she'd preserved a collection of Eleanor's Christmas cards, each one hand-painted, a small act of creativity disguised as social obligation. The cards revealed Eleanor's subtle rebellion against conformity. Traditional holiday. Scenes contained hidden elements, a bird breaking free from its cage, a door standing slightly ajar, windows opening to wild gardens. Year after year, she'd sent these small manifestos of freedom to Seattle's social elite. Patricia displayed the cards in the studio, creating a timeline of her mother's disguised artistic expression. Visitors to the workshops often stood before them, recognizing similar acts of creative resistance in their own lives. The book manuscript grew richer with each discovery. What had started as a story of 3 women reclaiming their artistic voices became a broader exploration of how creativity persists despite constraints, how truth finds expression even in silence. Dr. Sullivan visited the house regularly, observing the workshops and their impact. "This space has become more than a studio," she noted. "It's a permission slip for authenticity, a reminder that it's never too late to reclaim your voice." The winter light filled Margaret's studio with a gentle glow as women gathered to paint, share stories, and support each other's creative awakening. Patricia moved among them with growing confidence, her own journey from control to freedom serving as a powerful testament to possibility. One particularly cold afternoon, as snow fell softly outside the windows, Martha Reynolds returned with one final gift: Eleanor's acceptance letter to the Paris Art School, carefully preserved for over 5 decades. The yellowed envelope still contained the letter itself, along with a small self-portrait Eleanor had included with her application. "She wanted someone to know," Martha said simply, "that she had been more than just a Carter wife, more than Patricia's mother. She had been an artist first." The self-portrait showed a young woman with clear eyes and determined expression, holding a paintbrush like a sword. Patricia studied her mother's face for a long time before adding the portrait to the studio's growing collection of family artifacts. That evening, after everyone had gone home, I found Patricia still in the studio, working on a new piece, a large canvas showing Eleanor as she might have been in Paris, standing before an easel in a sun-filled atelier. "I spent so long trying to be perfect," Patricia said, not looking up from her work. I never understood that my mother's greatest gift was showing me how to be real. The book was scheduled for spring release, but the real story continued to unfold in daily moments of discovery and transformation. Each workshop participant, each shared story, each recovered piece of Eleanor's artistic legacy added to the house's growing mythology of liberation. Lucy, wise beyond her years, captured it perfectly in her latest illustration. A simple drawing of the yellow craftsman house with doors and windows flung wide open, colors spilling out into the world. It's not just our house anymore, she declared. It belongs to everyone who needs to remember their colors. The snow continued falling as Seattle settled into winter's quiet embrace. The yellow craftsman house stood warm and welcoming, its lights glowing through the darkness, offering sanctuary to all who sought to reclaim their creative truth. Tomorrow would bring new stories, new discoveries, new opportunities for healing through art. But tonight, surrounded by evidence of 3 generations of artistic resistance and redemption, we understood that our story was just one thread in a larger tapestry of creative liberation.